Good morning, it's Corrine. This morning I wasn't sure if I was actually going to do a video. Not because I didn't want to do a video. It's a nice day and I thought it'd be nice to go out and do a video, but initially I wasn't sure if I had anything to say. And I realized that what happens in my mind is if I don't want to put anything out there outside of my mind if I don't feel like it's important. Like, I think one thing as INFJs is we don't do a lot of just talking. You know, there's a lot of people out there. I think of my ESTJ mother who just talks to fill the air, and we don't do that at all. You know, I feel like if we talk, it's because there's something we have to say, or, you know, we've come to some sort of aha moment or light bulb, and then we're putting that out into the universe. So I did get to a point throughout the morning where I thought, okay, now I have something that I need to get out of my head. This morning, when I woke up, I didn't feel good. I felt kind of like upset. And the other thing I was thinking about is how really as INFJs, we're not in touch with our feelings. And that because we have that external outside feeling where we feel other people, but we don't really know what we're feeling until it really like bottles up and we're like, well, there's something inside of us. I don't know what it is. I don't like it. I need to do something. And I realize I can't go on with my day just like this. And what I do, or what I did this morning certainly, is I put on when I was getting my coffee and, you know, feeding my cats and stuff in the morning, I put on my songs on my playlist. If you notice, I have a playlist of songs and songs and movies, and then I also have a playlist of like INFJ stuff and inspirational talks. Well, specifically, the songs and the movies are all things that will push my what I call my emotional button. So like, if I listen to these songs, I don't know what it is necessarily. Sometimes I know what it is, but I don't know. I'll listen to the songs and then it will bring up something inside of me. It'll bring up this emotion, and this emotion will come up through me, and not always, but a lot of times I'll just start actually crying. Like my eyes will well up, and I'll have this sort of wave of emotion and tears. And for whatever reason, I find that helpful. I find it cleansing, and I think that might be how we feel, because I can't really explain it. I was watching this one YouTube video where this young woman who identifies as an INFJ, and she was saying how, you know, she doesn't always know how she feels, but sometimes she'll be talking to somebody and all of a sudden she'll burst out crying like she didn't even know she was sad. And I think that is really, really true for INFJs. And for me, how to deal with that and to get on with the day is really kind of to have this playlist of emotional button pusher things so that I can kind of cleanse myself. I can, you know, get that emotion out, and it really does feel good. It just, you know, it takes away that pain in some sort of way to sort of go through that emotional process. Because I think we just don't do it the way some other types might do that. And so I encourage you to make your own playlist. You know, if you feel like you're kind of stuck, if you get up in the morning and you feel, you know, you just can't get on with your day, you know, that might be something that's helpful for you. I mean, another thing I noticed concerning the types is I'm starting to learn the functions. I initially didn't take a lot of time to learn the functions because I thought it took me a while just to learn, you know, the letters and what that meant. And then I realized, oh, there's this whole underlying functions that don't necessarily logically correspond with the letters. You kind of have to figure it out and you kind of have to memorize it. But now that I'm starting to look at it, I'm starting to realize how genius this really is. And you know, at first I was like, oh, it can't be that complicated. How could they figure this out? But it's starting to make sense. I'm still learning. I'm still not at the point where I have them all memorized or even that I completely understand it all. But, I was looking more especially about the difference between the INFJ and the INFP, and now I'm starting to understand it more and more. And the funny thing is, first of all, I don't think these tests are perfect because I did another test last night and somehow it came out INFP. But I don't feel, now that I'm actually understanding the functions more and listening to more people talk about each of these personalities, I know I definitely am INFJ because I feel like I identify so much with just 90%. I certainly identify a little bit with INFP. I can understand that. And I can understand maybe how I test that way sometimes. But I feel like, my intuition tells me that I'm definitely INFJ. And I think if you're struggling with that, like, am I INFJ? Am I INFP? Just go with your gut and go with what feels right. Because they're both these amazing, wonderful types. Neither is better than the other. But just go with the one that makes more sense, either, with the functions and with the descriptions. So anyway, so I was learning the functions, and one thing that I did realize is that, I was talking about relationships a few days ago, and about my husband, and I wasn't really sure if he's INFJ or INFP, and now I'm absolutely realizing that he is INFP. And it's interesting because in a lot of ways we get along really well. And I think the reason why I was attracted to him in the first place is because he is one of those gentle souls. He'll sit and listen, he'll understand, he'll be there, he doesn't criticize. And he was the exact opposite of my family of origin. My family of origin, I was constantly being criticized, constantly they were finding fault. And, I'm realizing the inspector, the manager, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for the faults. They're looking to correct the faults, and then they feel better, that they've corrected me. And as an INFJ, I just wanted to be understood. I just wanted somebody to say, yeah, I get you. It'd be nice also if they patted me on the back and validated me, but that's okay. They don't have to. I just really, really wanted to be understood. And I felt with my husband was one of the first people that came into my life. I met him when I was 19. So he's one of those first people that I felt, wow, you really understand me. And I kept kind of waiting for him to criticize me, waiting for him to, tell me to do things differently or that I was doing something wrong. And, it never really came, like I would, I remember my family saying, oh, you should wear your contacts more often instead of your glasses. You look better or something like that. And he would say, oh, I like you in your glasses. So I was always like, oh, wow, that's interesting that you actually like me the way I am. So I think that's where kind of the initial attraction came from. I think he, wanted to feel comfortable too and wanted somebody who understood him. And I think that was where our connection originally came. Now, we've been together we've been married 24 years and together, and we've known each other for about 27 years at this point. And there is still, even though we get each other, there is certainly some disconnect. And I think where we don't connect is probably the difference between the INFJ and the INFP. And I just want to share a few little observances that I've had. And I started writing them down, and now I see how that happens. So, like, one thing is I am more direct and he is more indirect. I think what it is we're both struggling to be in the real world, and I think he escapes more from it and doesn't want to even think about the real world. And I feel like I'm a little more on top of it, or I'm not naturally on top of it, but I'm trying to be. I'm doing my lists, and I've bought different notebooks for him to do lists, and it just never happens. So I feel like I need to be more direct and push him, to get things done. We have to pay for the house. We have to do this stuff. We can't just like escape all day into our thoughts. And so, and I think sometimes he takes a little offense at that, because he'll say, well, I don't criticize you. And that's true. And I appreciate, I suppose, that. But I think that's one reason why I think of INFJs as being a little more action-oriented INFPs. Like we do want to try to make things happen. We do want to try to get things done. So even though we struggle doing it. So I think that's one thing. Another thing is like, and so actually another thing I want to mention was when I might say something to him and he will get insulted. And I never had any intention to insult him. And I'll try to explain that to him. And then I'll feel bad because I feel bad that he feels bad. But I think that has to do with the INFP, their introverted feeling, that they really are in touch with how they feel. And I could push his emotional button and he would get upset immediately about it, even though I had no intention to do that. And then, of course, I feel bad because I'm an extroverted feeler and I feel bad about it. So I think that's one thing that happens. Another thing is with his extroverted intuition, I have a tendency to just put things over and over through my head, like exactly what I'm doing right now, this monologue. That's what's going on in my head all the time, and I'm just the only audience to it. And I just flip it over, and it keeps going round and round until I come to a conclusion. And I think what that is the introverted intuition and the introverted thinking. Well, with him, with his extroverted intuition, so one thing I noticed with him is if we're watching the news, he always has to comment on it. He always has to like talk and bounce ideas off of me. And I don't really want to talk. I feel kind of bad about that. Or like when he's in the car, he's always listening to NPR. He always wants to get this more information and for him to come to conclusions. And then he also kind of wants to bounce those ideas off me, and then he wants to try to get me to agree to it, and I don't always agree to it, and and then he gets insulted if I don't. Like I'm like, well, I understand it, but do I have to, agree to it? I feel like I really don't, and I think that's another place where INFJs just want to be understood, but I feel like INFPs sometimes want to be validated. They want to say, yes, yeah, that's the correct viewpoint on that issue. And sometimes he'll be wanting to bounce these ideas off of me and I'll just walk away, which probably isn't very nice, but like I just don't want to talk. I guess I kind of want to be in my head and dealing with whatever issue I'm dealing with for that day. And so I'm starting to think that's the difference between the introverted intuition and the extroverted one. Another thing is with the sensing. Like, for example, if we're at a concert together, like the last concert we went, or one of the last ones we went to was the Sting Paul Simon concert, which I mentioned before, and I was just so, on this emotional high because I would hear a song and it would come inside me and I would just feel so amazing. And afterwards I was like, wow, wasn't that amazing? And he would say it was good, but it wasn't as good as Roger Waters', The Wall concert, and which was great. That was an awesome concert too, but like I think that might have been his introverted sensing in the sense that he was comparing. Like he was sitting there and kind of comparing the sensory of the two of them. Whereas I was sitting there with extroverted sensing and I was just feeling it in the moment. And, I kind of think, well, that's too bad, that he didn't feel that way. But, maybe that's what's necessary for his mind. So anyway, I don't want this to go too much further or it will take forever to upload. But those were just some observations. They may not be perfect. I might still be learning this. And certainly I don't want to in any way imply that INFJ is better than INFPs, because INFPs are totally amazing, wonderful people. Just wonderful, gentle souls, and I feel very lucky that at least I have one in my life. So, but always a little bit of struggle trying to identify with each other and trying to understand each other. And I'm looking forward to really looking more into the functions, because I think this really might help with the healing and understanding myself and the world a little bit better. So I hope you have a wonderful day. Love you. Bye.